Billion-Dollar Loser, The Epic Rise and Spectacular Fall of Neumann and WeWork by Reeves Wiedeman. Picture this. It's a warm afternoon in New York City's Gramercy Park neighborhood. A young architect is heading back to his office when something bizarre catches his eye. A tall, striking man with long, dark hair is striding down the sidewalk, talking frantically into his phone. He's wearing expensive casual clothes, a gray t-shirt, black pants. But here's the kicker: no shoes. This guy is walking completely barefoot on the grimy pavement of Manhattan. Now, New York is weird, right? You see all kinds of things. But this wasn't just some random eccentric. This was Neumann, founder and chief executive of the We Company. At that exact moment, his company, WeWork, was supposedly the most valuable private startup in America, worth $47 billion. On paper, he was one of the wealthiest people on the planet, and his empire? The one he'd spent a decade building? It was in the middle of the most humiliating, catastrophic implosion in modern business history. So how does someone who seemingly has it all, the vision, the charisma, billions in funding, end up wandering barefoot through the city while his kingdom crumbles? How does a company promising to elevate the world's consciousness become a global punchline? That's the wild story we're diving into today, through Reeves Wiedeman's incredible book, Billion-Dollar Loser. This isn't just about a failed public offering. It's about the intoxicating power of a good story, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and a financial system that let a fantasy grow so massive it almost felt real. By the end, you'll understand the magnetic formula that convinced the world's smartest investors to pour billions into what was basically an office rental company. More importantly, you'll see the timeless human flaws that brought it all crashing down. This is a masterclass not just in business, but in the seductive dance between genius and delusion. And it all starts with a chilling prophecy from a high school driving instructor. Long before Neumann was a billionaire, he was a teenager in Israel learning to drive. His instructor, a man named Ari Eigenfeld, saw something in young Adam, a restless, charming, slightly reckless energy. After watching him behind the wheel, Eigenfeld made a declaration that would echo through the decades. Either Adam will end up in jail, or he'll become a millionaire. Turns out, he would come dangerously close to both. To understand WeWork's story, you first need to understand Neumann. His childhood was basically a blueprint for the company he'd eventually create. Born to two young doctors, his upbringing was anything but stable. He moved 13 times before turning 22. His parents divorced when he was young, which he later called the hardest moment of his life. He bounced from Israel to Indianapolis and back, always the new kid, always the outsider, trying to find his way. He was even dyslexic, though that wasn't discovered until second grade, because he'd gotten so skilled at charming others into helping him, getting by on wit instead of work. This constant motion, this perpetual outsider feeling, created a deep, burning need within him for community, for belonging, for a place to call his own. He found a taste of that at Kibbutz Nir Am, one of Israel's utopian communal farms. There he witnessed the power of community firsthand, but he also noticed its flaws. The guy running the silverware factory, working 16-hour days to keep the kibbutz afloat, made the same money as the guy tending the garden for half that time. It never made sense, he said later. This planted a seed that would define WeWork, a capitalist kibbutz, a place with all the warmth and connection of community, but where, at the end of the day, you eat what you kill. After serving in the Israeli Navy, an experience he'd later embellished depending on his audience, he landed in New York City shortly after 9/11, crashing rent-free in his sister Audie's Tribeca apartment. She was a successful model. He was a 22-year-old freshman at Baruch College, living off his grandmother's generosity. Just another young person in the big city, dreaming of making it big. His first business ideas were, let's be honest, terrible. He tried creating women's high-heeled shoes that could collapse into flats. The prototype was so dangerous it nearly sliced off an employee's finger. Then he pivoted to crawlers, baby clothes with built-in knee pads. The tagline? Just because they don't tell you doesn't mean they don't hurt. He was burning through his grandmother's seed money faster than he could make it, his student visa about to expire. Here's the key moment. Adam Neumann was, for all intents and purposes, a failure. A college dropout with a failing baby clothes company, a charismatic talker with nothing to show for it. And then he met Rebecca Paltrow. On their very first date, she looked him straight in the eyes and delivered a verdict that would change everything. "You, my friend, are full of shit. Every single word that comes out of your mouth is fake." She saw right through his act. He talked constantly about money, a sure sign he didn't have any. She saw he didn't actually care about baby clothes, and wasn't even good at selling them. No one had ever held him accountable like that. But she also saw something else. Raw, limitless potential. "I just knew that he was going to be the man that was going to, hopefully, help save the world," she said later. She became his muse, his spiritual guide, and, as the company would later claim, his co-founder. She introduced him to Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism, which gave his ambition spiritual language, and she pushed him to stop chasing silly ideas and find his true calling. That calling emerged from simple necessity. To save money on his struggling baby clothes business, Adam moved his office to a cheaper building in Dumbo, Brooklyn. In that same building, an architect named Miguel McKelvey was working for a firm, feeling creatively unfulfilled. Miguel was Adam's opposite in almost every way. At 6'8", he was even taller than Adam, but quiet, methodical, introverted. He was raised in what he called a matriarchal collective in Oregon. 5 single mothers raising their children together, a kind of American kibbutz. He was the artist, the builder. Adam was the salesman, the dreamer. Miguel was the steady hand. Adam was the kinetic energy. They were a perfect match. They became friends, bonding over feeling like outsiders in New York and their frustration with the lack of community in their own apartment buildings. When they noticed their landlord renovating an empty floor, an idea sparked. What if they could lease an office floor, divide it into smaller glass-walled offices, add some cool design, and rent it out to freelancers and small companies who couldn't afford long-term leases? They called it Green Desk, branding it as eco-conscious workspace. It was 2008, the height of the financial crisis. Their landlord warned them it was the worst possible time to start a real estate business. But he was wrong. It was perfect timing. Everyone who had been fired from their jobs came, Adam said. The recession had created a new army of freelancers and entrepreneurs who needed a place to work that wasn't their depressing, lonely apartment. Green Desk was an instant runaway success. Miguel and Adam built the IKEA furniture themselves. They fostered a mini community with happy hours and coffee chats. But Adam quickly realized their vision was bigger than one building in Brooklyn. "We're not going to change the world with Green," he said. The real magic wasn't sustainability. It was community, bringing people together. So in 2009, they sold their Green Desk stakes for about $500,000 each and set their sights on Manhattan. They had a new name, one that captured their ambition to go beyond offices, to build apartments, hotels, maybe even banks. A friend who'd introduced Adam to Rebecca suggested it. "It's WeWork, it's we live, it's we sleep, it's we eat." Their first location was 154 Grand Street in Soho, a rundown building needing complete gut renovation. While Miguel, the architect, got his hands dirty, literally soda-blasting paint off brick walls himself, Adam did what he did best, sold a dream. He gave tours of an empty construction site, telling prospective tenants about the gym he planned for the basement and the park he was negotiating to build across the street. None of it was true. The basement never got a gym, and that lot across the street is still empty a decade later. But it didn't matter. He was selling a vision. WeWork opened in 2010, and just like Green Desk, it was a hit. It provided more than just office space. It provided belonging for a generation of workers disillusioned by the old corporate ladder. It was a startup for startups. They called tenants members to make them feel part of a club. This was the authentic beginning. the simple, powerful idea at the core of it all. But Adam wasn't content with just a successful business. He told his first employees they were working at the next Google. He was building what he called the world's first physical social network. This phrase is key to everything that happened next. Adam understood something profound about the 2010s. The most valuable companies, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, were tech companies. Real estate companies seemed old, slow, boring. Tech companies seemed fast, scalable, world-changing. And they got astronomical valuations from investors. So Adam decided WeWork wasn't a real estate company, it was a tech company, a community company, a platform. It just happened to use buildings, the same way Uber happened to use cars. This story was incredibly compelling, and it unlocked the next phase, the rocket ship. The company's culture began reflecting Adam's larger-than-life personality. It was a whirlwind of ambition, parties, and relentless, hustle-harder mentality. They started an annual corporate retreat called Summer Camp, which quickly morphed from a small gathering into a massive, multi-day festival that felt like mini Burning Man, complete with famous musical acts, endless alcohol, and cult-like devotion to the company's mission. The lines between work and life completely dissolved. Your coworkers were your best friends, your office was your social club, and your boss was your spiritual guide. Adam started Thank God It's Monday meetings, mandatory weekly pep rallies where he'd deliver rousing speeches, followed by rounds of tequila shots. But as the we culture grew, so did the I at its center. A hierarchy began forming. Adam told employees they needed to dress better, pointing out that his own t-shirts were from James Purse and cost $200. I look like someone people want to be, he said. He surrounded himself with a close circle of friends and family from Israel, creating an inner sanctum. His loyalty tests became more frequent. The fun, communal startup was slowly transforming into a kingdom, and there was no question who was king. In one meeting, he made a declaration that captured the shift perfectly. I am WeWork. This combination of compelling story and messianic founder was irresistible to investors in the post-recession era of cheap money. First came Benchmark, a top-tier Silicon Valley venture capital firm that had backed eBay and Uber. They saw past the real estate and bet on Adam's vision and the energy of the community he was building. Their 2012 investment valued WeWork at $100 million. Then came JP Morgan. The valuation jumped to $1.5 billion, then $5 billion, then $10 billion. With each new funding round, the legend grew, and Adam's belief in his own invincibility solidified. He wasn't just building a company, he was building a WeWorld. He launched WeLive, communal apartments, WeGrow, an elementary school run by Rebecca with tuition up to $42,000 a year, and even talked about WeWork Mars. The whole operation was fueled by a simple, intoxicating promise to investors: growth at any cost. Adam's attitude was, tell me how much revenue you want me to produce, and I'll tell you how much capital I need. Profitability was a problem for another day. This was the era of blitzscaling, and WeWork was its poster child. And then Adam Neumann met the one person whose ambition and appetite for risk might have been even greater than his own, Masayoshi Son. Masa, as he's known, is the founder of Japanese conglomerate SoftBank. He's a legend in the investing world. He famously turned a $20 million investment in Alibaba into a stake worth over $100 billion. He once lost $70 billion in the dot-com crash, more money than any single person in history, and then made it all back, and more. Masa doesn't invest based on spreadsheets. He invests on what he calls his animal smell. He looks for a sparkle in a founder's eyes. In 2016, Masa was armed with the biggest weapon the investment world had ever seen, the Vision Fund, a $100 billion war chest backed primarily by the Saudi Arabian government. He needed to deploy this capital quickly, and he needed huge bets on companies that could, theoretically, reshape entire industries. He first met Adam at a conference in India. Adam, as always, was selling his vision of the we generation. Masa was intrigued. Later that year, he scheduled a 2-hour tour of WeWork's headquarters in New York. He showed up late. "I only have 12 minutes, Masa said. "Go." Adam gave him a whirlwind tour. At the end, Masa told Adam to join him in his car. He didn't want a presentation. He pulled out an iPad, and in the back of the car, he sketched out deal terms. SoftBank and the Vision Fund would invest more than $4 billion into WeWork. The entire exchange, from the 12-minute tour to the signatures on the iPad, took less than half an hour. If WeWork was a rocket ship before, Masa's son had just strapped it to a nuclear warhead. His only feedback to Adam? He wasn't thinking big enough. "Make it 10 times bigger," he told him. Masa became known as Mr. 10 times. He told Adam, "In a fight, who wins? The smart guy or the crazy guy?" Adam replied that the crazy guy wins. "You are correct," Masa said, "but you and Miguel are not crazy enough." This was all the permission Adam needed. The era of managing the nickel was over. WeWork went on an unprecedented global expansion, a blitz against competitors. Adam sent employees to rival office spaces to offer their tenants a year of free rent to switch over. He was using Masa's money as a weapon, a strategy known as capitalism moat. He was trying to drown his competition in cash. The company was hiring 100 new people every week, opening 2 new locations a day. The spending was astronomical. The losses were even bigger. In 2018 alone, WeWork lost nearly $2 billion, but it didn't seem to matter. In early 2019, Masa invested another $2 billion, pushing WeWork's valuation to its dizzying peak, $47 billion. Adam Neumann had reached the summit. He had a private jet worth over $60 million, multiple homes across the country, and near absolute control over his company. He and Masa began plotting their most audacious move yet, a deal codenamed Project Fortitude. It was a plan for SoftBank to invest another $20 billion, buying out all other investors and taking the company private forever. Adam would never have to answer to public markets. He would be king of his own private kingdom, funded by Masa's endless supply of cash. But the world was beginning to shift. Global stock markets grew volatile. The murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi put a harsh spotlight on the Vision Fund's primary backer, the Saudi government. And inside SoftBank, many were growing skeptical of Masa's infatuation with Adam. Just before Christmas 2018, while Adam was surfing in Hawaii, he got a call from Masa. Project Fortitude was dead. The market was too unstable, the risk too great. It was a devastating blow. Adam had come to see Masa as a father figure, the one person who truly understood his vision, and now he'd been abandoned. One of his top deputies later said, "I don't think he ever really recovered. Almost all of his actions, from there to the end, tie back to that." With no more private money on the horizon, WeWork was out of options. The company was burning through cash at an alarming rate. It had to go public. What happened next was the unraveling. In August 2019, WeWork released its S-1, the document required for a public offering. It was supposed to be a dry financial prospectus. Instead, it was a bizarre, sprawling document that laid bare all the company's excesses and contradictions. It opened with a strange, mystical dedication written by Rebecca. "We dedicate this to the energy of we, greater than any one of us, but inside each of us." It detailed Adam's immense control, including a provision allowing Rebecca to help choose his successor. It revealed shocking conflicts of interest, like the fact that Adam had purchased buildings and then leased them back to his own company, personally collecting millions in rent. Or that he'd charged the company nearly $6 million for the rights to use the trademark "we," a name he didn't even come up with. And then there were the numbers. The document confirmed what critics had suspected for years. Beneath all the talk of technology and community, WeWork was a traditional real estate company with a frighteningly risky business model. It was losing billions, and its path to profitability was nowhere in sight. The public reaction was swift and brutal. The company, and Adam himself, became subjects of intense mockery and scrutiny. The magical story that had worked so well in private boardrooms fell completely flat under the harsh lights of public opinion. Adam's investor roadshow was a disaster. His charismatic sales pitch, once his superpower, now came across as rambling and desperate. A banker told one of his executives, "Every meeting Adam has, you're losing $1 billion off your valuation." The valuation plummeted from $47 billion to $20 billion to under $10 billion. The public offering was postponed, then canceled. The company was weeks away from running out of money. The very investors who had enabled Adam's rise, SoftBank, JP Morgan, Benchmark, now turned on him. The board realized that the only way to save the company was to remove its founder. In September 2019, just 6 weeks after releasing the S1, Adam Neumann was forced to step down as chief executive of the company he'd built. SoftBank stepped in to bail out the company, but at a valuation of just $8 billion, a fraction of its peak. Adam walked away with a potential exit package worth over $1 billion, a golden parachute that stunned the world. The dream was over. The We company laid off thousands of employees. It sold off the private jet, shuttered WeGrow, and abandoned its grander ambitions. The physical social network had collapsed. The king of the capitalist kibbutz had been dethroned, and the man who was once on top of the world was left to wander the streets, figuring out what had just happened. When you step back from the whirlwind of parties, private jets, and billion-dollar valuations, the WeWork story becomes a powerful, almost tragic fable for our times. What can we, especially as young, ambitious people, learn from this epic rise and fall? The first and most obvious lesson is about the immense power of a story. Adam Neumann was, without a doubt, a master storyteller. He didn't sell office space. He sold a vision. He sold community, a new way of life. The idea that your work could be your passion, and your colleagues could be your family. He understood that humans aren't just motivated by logic and spreadsheets. We're moved by emotion, by belonging, by the desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves. For anyone looking to build something, this is crucial. Your story, your why, can be your most powerful asset. But this story also serves as a stark warning about believing your own story too much. Adam's vision started as a powerful tool, but it eventually became a reality distortion field. He started believing that WeWork wasn't just a real estate company, that its mission to, quote, elevate the world's consciousness was more important than its balance sheet. The lesson here is humility. A compelling vision is essential, but it must be tethered to reality. At some point, the numbers have to work. Your business has to make sense. As Adam himself said, in a moment of clarity during a commencement speech, if you're not profitable at the end, don't build that. Perhaps the most practical lesson is the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Adam built an empire, but he surrounded himself with an echo chamber of friends, family, and loyalists who were either unable or unwilling to challenge him. The one person who told him the unvarnished truth on their first date, Rebecca, later became part of that echo chamber. Imagine if he'd kept people around who were empowered to say, "Adam, you're full of shit." The entire story might have been different. As you build your own teams, projects, life, seek out those who will challenge you, ground you, and speak truth to you, especially when it's hard to hear. Finally, the WeWork saga is a mirror reflecting the excesses of the last decade. It exposes a venture capital ecosystem that often prioritizes hyper-growth over sustainable business, a culture that celebrates charismatic founders as messiahs, and a system where enormous fortunes can be made by passing risk on to the greater fool. It forces us to ask tough questions about what we value. Is success just about achieving the highest valuation? Or is it about building something real, something lasting, something that truly serves others, without losing its soul in the process? The rise of WeWork was a thrilling, intoxicating ride. Its fall was a necessary and painful course correction. It reminds us that even the most captivating stories eventually have to face the music. and that true, lasting value is built not on hype, but on substance. Not on a fantasy of we, but on the quiet, daily work of building something that works. We've walked through this epic rise and fall today, but believe me, this is just scratching the surface. Reeves Wiedeman's book is filled with details and moments that bring this incredible story to life in a way a summary just can't. If you're fascinated by the psychology of ambition and the high-stakes world of modern business, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. It's a page-turner that reads more like a thriller than a business book. You can find a link in the description below. And if this journey gave you something to think about, I'd be so grateful if you'd support our channel by hitting that subscribe button. We're here to explore the great minds and epic stories that shape our world, and I'd love for you to be part of our community as we continue to learn and grow together.